Let me share my screen. Let me show you this before I actually share when I answer your question. Share. When you go back to watch the video, is it helpful to have the text on it? Yes or no? If you look at the top of the screen, you see me speaking and you see the words up there.
Yes.
You think it's helpful? Okay. I will leave it on then. Okay. So today we're going to talk about establishing operations. Let's take a look at what is in the chapter. And I know that some of you are taking the project management class or you have taken it. And in project management, there's a concept. In project management, there's a concept called a critical path. So how many of you have heard of that, have used it? Just raise your hands today. We're going to do less typing and more visual. So raise your hand if you've heard of the critical path, you've used it in your project management. So let's see, one person raised their hand. Okay. So we'll talk about what it is today. Very useful tool to make sure that your project stays on track and to monitor those tasks and activities that are on that path. Because what it means is that, excuse me, it means that if a task is on the critical path, if that task is delayed, the entire project is delayed. So as a project manager, one of the things that a project manager has to do is to identify those tasks that can delay the project, and they put them on the critical path. That the critical path is very visible to everyone. Excuse me. For some reason my throat is giving me a hard time today. Okay, hopefully I'm back. So the project manager makes those tasks available to everyone so they can see which tasks are going to delay the project if they are delayed. We're also going to discuss how location can be used as a competitive advantage. And I've mentioned to you early on in the course how McDonald's, they were in the business of real estate, not, fast food. So what they do is they make sure that they're strategically located where there's a lot of traffic so that they are always successful where they they put their stores or their restaurants. It's very strategic how they place their restaurants. We're going to talk about issues concerning financing as a new business, what type of financing you should have available. Discuss how you can present yourself as being legitimate. For example, if you have a post office box as an address, that doesn't look legitimate. It looks sketchy. And then production management in startup. We're going to talk about what that looks like. Okay. So these are the topics we're going to take a look at. The critical path chart, location, what to consider when you're financing, how to establish legitimacy, production management, and your supply chain. We spoke about that a few times, how important that is, because that's how your product or service gets to the end user or to your market. How to chart your production, quality, equipment if you need it, the timing, and then finally time management. So let's talk about the critical path. So the critical path ensures that you or the project manager makes the most efficient use of the time that you have. So in terms of operations, it's the first step. So you're starting up a business, you're looking at all the tasks and activities that it entails, and then you put those tasks on a path and you determine what the critical path is. All right, so let's take a look at an example. So let's say we have, in this example, we have 4 steps. So the first task is to establish your business account. And you want to make sure that you have a business account. You don't want to mix your business finances with personal finances. Again, that is not wise and it does not establish legitimacy. So you've established that it takes 1 week to do this, but the actual time is 3 hours. So the difference between that is that, I can say during this week coming up, April 3rd, I'm going to establish the bank account, but it's only going to take 3 hours because it might entail me reaching out to different people, them, communicating back and so forth. So the actual time is 3 hours, but it's going to happen within that week. So it could be 1 hour on Monday, 1 on Wednesday, and 1 on Friday. And in project management, that's the difference between effort and duration. So the time to complete is the duration, and the actual time is the effort. Hope that's clear. The next column, previous task required. That's where if there is a predecessor, a task that has to happen before you can perform this task. So this is where the critical path comes in, because if your task is dependent on a previous task, then think about it. If that previous task is delayed, then your task is delayed. So for example, with this bank account situation, if you are waiting for the application from the bank, and I know today you can just do it online and it's really, really quick, but let's take a step back to 1980. You're waiting for this application from the bank, and that's delayed. Then you can't fill out the application. So that process is delayed, right? So we have the responsible parties here. So there are no tasks required for this in establishing the bank account. There's no previous task required for this. So we have James and Margaret owns this task. All right, the second task is to obtain a bank loan. Go take 2 weeks duration, effort 4 hours, no previous task, James and Margaret. Third one, establish an accounting system. It's going to take 3 weeks. It's actually 1 week of actual time. No previous task is required. Margaret owns this. And then finally, we're going to lease a facility. It's going to take 2 weeks, 20 hours of the actual effort. It is dependent on the previous task, which is step 2. So until we obtain the bank loan, we cannot lease a facility. And if that's delayed, so it takes 2 weeks. If that's delayed a week, excuse me, it's going to push out task 4 for 2 weeks. So you can see how this is looking critical, right? Critical to the project success. Any questions about the critical path? Before I move on to the next thing.
Yes, when we say previous task required in lease facility, when we say two here means the step number 2 is required to do this
yes.
task, or 2 steps or 2 tasks generally are required to do. Step 2.
Step 2 as I said, obtain the bank loan. So step 2.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Step 2, task 2. If you use Microsoft Project, all the tasks are numbered, and you can you can put it in as a predecessor.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm. All right. So this is another critical path table. We see we have to obtain equipment and equipment for office and manufacturing. And this is dependent on task number 2 and 4, which is, let's just show you. Obtain the bank loan, lease a facility, and then you can obtain the equipment, which makes sense. You need the money to be able to lease it. Acquire raw materials is also dependent on those 2 tasks, task number 2 and 4, or step 2 and 4. Make initial sales calls, again, 2 and 4. I'm skipping over the time to complete and the time involved because I think you understand that pretty well. Just want to focus on this because this is where the critical path comes into bear. And then producing initial inventory is dependent on 4, 5, 6, and 7. So anytime you see a lot of dependencies in your project, it means that there is a critical path. So let's take a look at how we can build this chart. So the critical path chart demonstrates how the activities fit together and how they build on each other. And it allows you to understand which activities can occur concurrently, which is at the same time, and which has to occur sequentially. All right. So even though, and this is mostly for the benefit of those who haven't seen the critical path before, you might think that if someone says, "Well, how long is the project going to take?" You might want to add up this time here. 1 week. That's 3 weeks, 6, 8 weeks, 12 and 4, 16 and 8, 24 and 4. You might say it's going to take 28 weeks to complete, but that's not true because there's some tasks that can be performed concurrently. So let's take a look at the critical path chart. So these are all of the tasks on the chart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And it shows you the task and the duration. So in the first task is open up the bank account. It takes a week. The accounting system takes 3 weeks. The bank loan takes 2 weeks. The lease takes 2 weeks. Buying the equipment takes 4 weeks. Product is ready 4 weeks and so forth. So if you take a look at this, we can actually establish the bank account, but we can actually do the accounting system next because the accounting system doesn't have a dependency. So you can do that and you can do the bank loan. You can do these concurrently. That's why they're in parallel streams. Okay. So while you're getting the bank loan and the lease, you can establish your accounting system. Okay. All right, so we move on to task number 3, which is buying the equipment for 4 weeks, buy the raw materials 4 weeks, sales calls 8 weeks, initial product ready 4 weeks, deliver first sales. So because these are dependent upon these, you can't start this until these are completed. If you remember on the chart, we need 2 and 3 before we could do this. And it kind of shows you as you go through, which are dependent. So the critical path, so we have different paths through this. You can go one, this one, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, end. Or you can go this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, and end. And the third path is this way, this way, this way, this way, and that way. So we've seen three paths. So if you add up the number of weeks, 4 and 3, 7, and 4, 11 weeks. It's first path. Second path is 2, 4, and 8, 12 weeks. Third path is 2 and 2, 4, and 4, 8, and 4 is 12 weeks. Is that right? 8, 10, 12. So the critical path is the longest path. So the path that says 12 weeks is the longest path. That means that's the shortest amount of time that a project can take, 12 weeks. So even though this first path here, bank account, accounting system, buy raw materials, initial product, even though that takes 11 weeks, we can't use that path because we're excluding other things. So the critical path is the longest path through the network. And sometimes they call this a network diagram. So this is how you would build your critical path. You would identify all your tasks and their duration, and then plot it on this, and then you add up all the durations. The durations that total the longest duration, that is your critical path. That means that is the shortest amount of time that the project can be completed in. And because you're on the critical path, any predecessor, as you can see, we have all these predecessors here. Any delay in the predecessor is going to delay the entire project. Okay. Questions about the critical path? All right, let's continue. The best way to understand this is to actually do it yourself. Get a piece of paper or a whiteboard, digital whiteboard, and just sketch it out. And then add up the durations, and the one that is the longest, that is your critical path. So you know what time frame you have to work with. So, question, time for some interaction. And this time I can only do, I can't do a word cloud because I can't type. So I'm going to have you type your answers in the chat. Or, raise your hand and come off mute and respond to this question. The question is a study cafe a lucrative business idea? So study cafe is someplace where you go to study. You can see this young lady is studying for her MBA. She's got her beverage, she got her earpods, and she's going at it. So let's ask to the class, what is your take on this? Is a study cafe a lucrative business idea? Yes or no, and why? And you can put your answers in the chat, or you can come off mute and share your answers with the class. Any thoughts about this? And as you're thinking about it, think like this. Would I go to a study cafe? And why or why not? So maybe that's a question I'll ask you. If there was a study cafe in your area, would you go to it to study? Yes or no?
Yes, if needed. It
If you
depends on
needed
the
to.
situation. Yeah, sometimes, for example, some people experience outages at their homes or internet problems, so they go to
Yeah.
cafes so they can do their work or studies there.
Okay. That's a good point. Thank you for that. And I see
For me, yes, because it has a free internet.
free is good.
Well,
Actually,
if I, hello,
Yes, we can hear
go
you.
ahead, Mr. Muhammad.
Yes.
no, please continue. Please continue.
Well, if I will take this as a business, then I don't think it might be a good idea. Okay. First, anyone who is studying will stay at least 2 hours in the same place. Okay, and it doesn't mean that they will keep requesting for beverages or something to eat. Maybe they will just take one cup of coffee and just occupy the place for 2 or 3 hours. Okay, uh, there is Lizette mentioned something that if the seat will be rented, okay, it's a good idea, but who will pay for the seat? Okay, why can't I just go home and study or buy my beverage and go somewhere quiet to study? Okay, uh, as a coffee shop, there might be noisy as well. Okay, there might be groups of students studying. So if I am a single person that I want to study alone in a quiet place, this wouldn't be a good place. Okay, maybe if it is a group, then it will be more profitable. But a
Okay.
single person, I don't think so.
Okay. Good points. You raised some good points. You all did. Mohammed, what are your thoughts?
Yes, okay. So I would think about where I will start this new business, that study cafe, because it depends on the customers. It depends on the area. There are some areas that is or are near to, for example, a lecture university where the students will look for something like that, and they will not look for the money they are paying to study, because they have their own, I would say, mood of studying. Sometimes they want to come out of their home, they want to go to stay there. So if I will open it in an area where I will check how many or what is the percentage of people who will like for it, okay, so I will open it, because it has no big, I would say, from my mind, no big initial cost for it, while it could attract too many people, and they will pay a lot according to their standard of I would say income or something like that. So I will go for it according, if it is near to that lecture area.
Okay. That's great. You guys, you're raising some really good points and assessing this critically, which is what the purpose of this is. So you have pros and you have cons. Um, the one thing is certain that this requires careful study to understand your market, understand what the need is, and then perhaps this is a very niche market, like a small market that you've done focus groups and studies, and you decided there is a need for it. These people are willing to pay, or these people are, you might establish a minimum. If you come to study here, you've got to spend at least, $10. You can establish a time limit. The time limit is, 2 hours. And if you want more time than that, you got to spend more money. Um, a point was raised about the business having more stable internet. That's an issue for a lot of people. Some people need to get out of the house, away from the cats and the dogs and the kids, everyone else. They're like, let me go somewhere. So you think about all these factors. So great answers. So let's see what Samia says. Location, definitely. Target market, competition, and the quality of service offered. Um, Elena is saying quiet environment for students of studying work. To make it successful, consider factors such as location, pricing, atmosphere, and services offered. Does that talk about renting the seat? So an alternative to that is to have it at work with only beverages and snacks. Sammy put the definition of the critical path in the chat. Thank you for that. And Lauren gave me the questions that I asked for earlier. Thank you. You guys are my little we're co-teaching today. We're teaming it out. All right, so great answers. All right, let's move on. So the answer to that is it depends, obviously. So the critical path, you should constantly update it because things change, because the task durations can change. So if you have a task that has a predecessor, it's going to affect your task. And when you use software such as Microsoft Project, it makes the adjustment for you. So when you establish your critical path, this is something that would be great in your presentation when you put all your startup activities together, put it on a path, and then you can share that with your potential suppliers, your friends, and industry experts. So think about the critical path even beyond the MBA program. Like if you were planning a wedding, for instance, or a vacation or a trip, this is a good thing to use so you can see what, you have things that are what's the word I'm looking for? A task, let's say the flight is on May the 2nd. Well, that's a fixed task. So everything else to be back work, or you do a work back to find out everything you have to do before May the 2nd to make that work. All right, so let's talk about how location can be used as a competitive advantage. And I mentioned McDonald's that have, oh, by the way, speaking of food, are you guys still celebrating Ramadan? I didn't check this week. Is it over or is it still going on?
Yes,
Still
still for
Still
20
going on.
days.
When does it end?
Yeah. 21.
Oh, it's a whole month. It's like is
Yes.
it 30 days?
30 days or not
Yes.
29 days.
All right, so how you doing on Ramadan? Are you doing okay?
Great.
Yes, it's okay.
So I want to talk about
Except that at the time of the breakfast that we have to log out of the session. That is the only thing.
okay.
But else everything is fine.
So that's why I see a lot of participation at the top end. So you're going to be leaving soon. All right, so I won't talk a lot about any food or anything like that. Location. If you're a non-internet, that means that you're not a virtual business, you're a brick and mortar business, you're a BAM business, then location is critical. So one of the things that I noticed about my neighborhood, on one direction, I'm about 20 minutes from the interstate. That's the highway. And so this main road that you go down, the businesses are strategically placed. So as you're on your way to work or whatever, there's certain type of businesses on that right side, because we drive on the right-hand side, that kind of goes with what you might want to do before you get on the highway. On the left side, when you're coming back from the interstate, there are other types of businesses that are there so that you can, it makes sense. For example, they've got supermarkets on both sides, which makes sense. There is a car wash on the right side, a full service car wash on the right side, but not coming back. There are restaurants on both sides, and Let's see what's unique. So as I try to tax my brain this morning, those restaurants and those businesses are strategically placed because in the mind, the business owner, they're looking for, when am I going to get the most traffic for this business? And does it make sense to have it on the right side of this super busy highway or the left side? It does make sense to have it when people are going out on their way to somewhere, or does it make sense to have it when they're coming back on their way to their homes? So that was real interesting. And you might have observed the same in your neighborhood. Which types of businesses are on which side of the highway? So the best location can be decided by breaking the business down into the critical design features of the business, and that's what I'm talking about here. And then you can show your resource, your process lists, the ones that we had earlier that we put on the critical path. You can look at that to determine what the best location would be for your business. And of course, leasing amount, the conditions of the lease, all that comes into play. So in the United States, we have this concept called a strip mall. So it doesn't mean people are stripping. That's not what it means. It means that there's a strip of land where there are a lot of businesses together on that strip of land, and it's zoned for commercial properties. So as I said before, it's along a major road. Only small businesses in there. And then we have anchor stores. Anchor stores are the big name stores that has brand recognition, that people would go to that area, and because they recognize that store, then you as a small business can benefit from their customers, the overflow of customers. So I talk about Walmart a lot. That's a big store here, especially in the South where I live. And in this one shopping area, I'm thinking about, there is a Walmart there, and then you have other small businesses around that can profit from Walmart's customers. So the one closest to me has a Walmart. It has several anchor stores, but then you have other stores too. So if someone's going to Walmart and Walmart has 10,000 customers a day, then I can capture, 200 of those customers or 50 or what have you. I'm going to have something in my store that's going to attract um, the Walmart customers. That's what we talked about last week. When you try to identify your market, you look at, how much does this anchor store, what's their customer base, and then what share of that do you want to take? So it's a good strategy to have your business affiliated location wise with a well-known established brand. So let's think about this and think about your business. I'll narrow it down. Think about your business idea. Is your business suitable to be in a shopping center? Why or why not? So we have four business ideas. So is it suitable for a strip mall or no? Why or why not?
Not all businesses can fit in such shopping area.
So think about your
Usually,
business, the business that you're actually bringing to fruition. We're going to narrow it down to those four businesses that's represented here. Think about the business that you're proposing and think about, is it suitable for a shopping center?
this is when I see these types of shopping centers, I usually see people selling handmade stuff, like they are
Mm,
presenting them in small compartments of the shopping mall,
mm,
presenting something like covers for laptops, mobile phones,
mm,
presenting accessories, home accessories. So this stuff can be sold in such type of mall. But if my business is a restaurant, for example, or a luxurious furniture hub or stuff like that, they will not fit in this type of shopping
So
center.
Nuran, let's narrow down your response. The response I'm looking for is the business that you are proposing in this class.
Yes, my proposal is for handmade stuff, accessories.
Okay, so it would fit in
Yeah,
a strip mall. Okay,
yeah.
thank you for making that clear. I wasn't clear at first. Yeah. Okay, so yeah. Okay, great answer. Anyone else?
Yes, Professor. So for us also, like we are actually proposing the electric charging station. And in my understanding, that will also fit in any such location where we have either lot many shops or it's a shopping mall. So I think it will fairly fit in such a location.
Excellent. Thank you both for that. The rest of you, your business idea, will it fit in a strip mall? Yes or no? And why not? So we have two other teams that I want to hear from.
Will it fit where? Again, please.
In a strip mall, the strip mall where you have like a shopping center, or do you need to be someplace else? All right, so think about that, because when you do your presentation, you want to include if you're going to use location as a competitive advantage, and Neuron, you would do that because you're selling these as accessories. Can't talk today. And also, Samuel, you would do that because you want to benefit from a larger store there, or just it doesn't even have to be a larger store. Other stores are there, so people are coming there anyway. So because I'm a new business, I want to situate myself where there's going to be traffic. When I say traffic, I mean customers. So you want to include this in your plan, because as an investor, I want to the most important thing an investor wants to know is how can I get my money back? Which means that how many people are going to be purchasing your product or service, and how can you ensure that you get the maximum number of people to do so? And a location strategy is one of those ways to do it. So you can say we're pursuing a location strategy in terms of our operations. So this operations that we're doing today, this is a section of your plan. All right, so let's look at an analysis of location. So an A location is in a mall, on a busy street, or tourist heavy. So it's a location where you don't have to set up a warehouse, for example. You have all your stuff in store. Okay. So as an entrepreneur, look at the type of business, the amount of money that you have to invest in the first 3 or 5 years, and then in the long run. Okay. So you would invest in a real estate agent, obviously, who knows a lot about the commercial real estate industry in the area that you want to operate, and then have them to kind of get the details in terms of how this location is going to meet your need as a business. Let's talk about financing. So in the first several periods, whether that's months or quarters or years, you may not be generating income or revenue, and you may just be extending or expending monies. So you have to make sure that within those first periods, that you have the following in place in terms of financing. So security deposits, if you are in a BAM location, brick and mortar, they require security deposits. A lot of times they require first and last month of the agreement, and maybe some other deposit. To set up utilities, your phone, your water, your electricity, gas, etc. If you're a new business, there's a utility fee setup or utility setup fee. the purchase or lease of the equipment you need initially, whether they are computers or, ovens or what have you, licenses and inspections. So when you're in a physical location, you need a license, a business license. You also need a license to be in that space. If you're serving alcohol, you need a special kind of license for that. And then inspections. If you're selling food, there are people that come in and inspect, to make sure that the food is going to be clean and sanitary, and is it going to have adequate space for people? Are there fire exits? Things like that. All your initial supplies have to be in consideration. The hiring and training of your initial staff. Any initial advertising expenses. We talked about most of all of these already, so there's some finance attached to it. And these could actually be line items on your cash flow, if you will. And initial advertising expenses and bank setup fees to set up bank accounts and so forth. So these are some of the areas that you need to consider how to finance in the early stages of the business, especially if the business will not be generating revenue during that time. All right, so you want to establish a bank relationship. When you are in your business, you want to make sure that you establish a line of credit or working capital so that the bank can issue a line of credit. And usually the new account in this country we do, and maybe in North America, maybe in Canada, we do what you call credit history. So even as a business, they're looking at my credit history. When I set up my business, they looked at my credit history to open the bank account to get the line of credit. So they'll be looking at personal credit histories until the business is established, has its own credit history. Then they'll look at that in the future. So working capital or line of credit, it's revolving. That means that if you pay it off, you get, if you have a line of credit for $20,000, for instance, and you pay it off, you have that line of credit of $20,000 available. Again, all right. A business credit card, talked about that already, and a business checking account, and that's for when you're doing transactions where you need to access your bank account versus your credit card. So bank account is the real money, credit card is borrowed money. Okay. Usually when you have a business account, because you guys are a team, it requires multiple signatures. So maybe whoever is the president, CEO, or I should say CFO, whoever the financial officer is going to be one of the signers, and maybe the president, CEO is the other signer. Okay. So when you pick your bank, you want to find the one that's most suitable for your business. It doesn't mean that it's the closest bank. And what's the plus is that if you already have a personal relationship with a bank, it's easier for you to establish a business relationship with them because they know who you are and you've been established as trustworthy. Okay. How to establish legitimacy. So a stakeholder or a customer or a supplier, the optics, when they see your business, when they hear about your business, when you talk about the business, how do they know that you are legit, and how will you be in business for the next year, or will you be in business in the next year? So this is critical. These are optics. This is what people see. So this is critical to you being a long-term business. So let's talk about how you can establish your legitimacy. The business checking account. So if you're writing a check to someone, or if they're going to deposit some money in your account, it is a business account. It's not a personal account. The business credit card, when you're purchasing stuff from suppliers, you're using a business credit card. You got a bank line of credit. You have professional business cards. I don't know, we don't use business cards that much anymore, but if you do, it's professional. You get it professionally done. You have professional correspondence, such as if you're writing a letter, it's on a letter, a professional letterhead. If you're billing someone and you're sending them an invoice, the invoice it has professional letterhead on it, your envelopes, etc. You're using professional advertising materials. The business address, there's prestige attached to it. So it's not, as I said, a post office box, or it's not your home. Especially, you can have home businesses if they're virtual, but if you're saying, I'm going to open up a hair salon and the address is in a residential area, it may not look legitimate. Okay. Job titles. So not made up job titles, but the ones that we talked about in the beginning, like chief financial officer, chief technology officer, and so forth. Telephone answering support. One of the things that I do with my business, I established an 800 number, which is a toll-free number, so you can call from any place. And that was before we became more or less rigid with phone calls. Now you can just call people voice over internet for free. But I established an 800 number so that looks legitimate. And then I have a answering service that answers the calls and can direct the calls to the right people. So that's on the front end. So if I'm not able to answer the phone, I can have virtual assistant to do that. A high quality web page. So make sure your web page is very professional design. You have a board of advisors and or directors. We talked about that in the beginning, so you can identify that in it. And then endorsements. These are people or businesses that can endorse you and say, you're credible. It's very good to get customer feedback and publish that feedback. Like if your customers had a great experience, make sure that's on your website somewhere, right? So these are ways to establish you're being a legitimate business. There's some of the ways, so make sure that you have established those. All right, how do you manage production? This is the process of moving your product or service to where the customer is paying for your product or service. So how do you get from that point to the customer paying? Okay. So whether or not you code this, or make this formal, there is a process. And you could put on this system, you could put your most common and expected. So what happens mostly, for most of the time. So for example, if I have a speaking engagement, there's speaker bureaus that we have that you sign up with, and then if they have a fit for you, they reach out to you and discuss with you, what it is, what the fee is, duration, audience, blah, blah, blah. Then the next step is you agree to do it. Then there's a contract that's signed, and then there's some travel arrangements and equipment and all the other stuff. So that's the most common and expected routine for me in my business. So that could be my, from the point where they reach out to me to where I'm collecting that payment after the engagement. That's my production management system. So let's take a look at the production task. All right, production chart. So let's say we're doing a plaque. We're in the business of creating plaques for events. Like you can create plaques for work events. You can for schools. You might give a plaque to your spouse, best spouse ever. So this is my production chart. So this is where I select the wood for the plaque, different types of woods, and I type in the information needed into the engraving machine to the best spouse ever. And I also chart the amount of time it's going to take. So it's going to take me 5 minutes to select the wood, 10 minutes to type into the engraving machine. That's the machine that actually writes it on the wood. 15 minutes for the engraving to take place. I perform a quality check, and if I pass it, what I don't like here is that there's no duration for the quality check. So I would put how long it takes for the quality check. I would include that in there because that is part of the production. So let's say it takes 5 minutes for a quality check. It's a plaque. So let's say 5 minutes. I would add that in there. So if I pass, then I polish the plaque for about 5 minutes, and then I package the plaque. And here you go. Now I'm getting paid for this plaque. So we're assuming in this that the customer is right there. We're not mailing it off because they're about to pay me. The production is about, when you start to when you receive the money. So we're assuming they're in person. If I do the quality check and it does not pass, it fails, I have to go back to the first step, which is selecting the wood plaque. So this is your production charge. Where you start to where you're collecting money for your product or service. All right, before we go into quality, which is really important, any questions about anything we covered so far? Oh, I see one. What if we need to deliver? Then we should add this time also. That's that. Yes, because you want to put the task up until when you actually are paid for it. However, if you're delivering something, usually people pay for it ahead of time, or they might put a deposit, right? They might put a 50% deposit down. I'm glad you asked that question because when I first started consulting, I was doing software consulting, and I would design systems rather, which would include writing codes. And what I would do with projects is I would ask for a 50% deposit because the time it took to do this was extensive. It could be months. So you don't want to wait for months to get paid. So I would ask for a 50% deposit up front. And of course, this involves contracts and, a proposal and all this other stuff is, all this stuff is in place. I would ask for 50% deposit. And that would ensure that even if I did not recover the other 50%, I did get some kind of remuneration for the work I did. Because what if I got to the end and the customer is not able to pay, or they're like, we changed our mind, or, this is different from what I thought, whatever. You get that money in hand so you can at least cover your costs. And we talked about that, I think last week or the week before. You want to make sure that you cover your costs so that it's just not a wash. What if the customer returns some of all the items are not satisfied with the quantity? Yep. So that's why you ask for the deposit. So if I'm doing a plaque for you, maybe you wanted to have a plaque for the best spouse ever. By the time the plaque is done, you change your mind. You don't want to give that best spouse ever plaque. So there's an issue. So you either do 50% up front, or sometimes you've got to pay for everything up front. And then you have some kind of return policy, right? So think about that with your deposit. You require deposit up front. And a lot of businesses operate that way. Okay. Did I answer your question, Lizette?
Yes, thank you, Professor.
You're quite welcome. So we've talked about quality several times, but I cannot overstate how important it is to deliver quality to your customer. One of the things that ensures is that you have customers coming back to you. You have repeat customers. It also ensures that the word of mouth, WOM, the strongest marketing there is. You can have commercials, you can have billboards, You can have, you know, websites and all that. However, the strongest is where people are recommending your business to others. That's the strongest and most reliable marketing method. And when, you know, with social media, obviously that's a word of mouth, because, you know, people can comment like, oh, this was a great service, I'll totally recommend it. You have the those sites that do reviews. We have Yelp here in the States, and where you can rate businesses. Do you guys have those kind of sites where you rate businesses in your respective areas? You can say I had a great time, or I did not. Do you guys have that? I'm sure you do. What types of ways can you rate businesses in your specific country? Anyone? Are you able to rate businesses or your business experience?
I'm sorry, but can you repeat the question again?
So we have websites where you can go to rate a business, to talk about your experience as a customer. And we have several websites that do that. It's not the company's website. It's like, for example, we have a website called Yelp, YELP, where I could go to Yelp and talk about my experience with the business.
Yes, we also have the same, and we can rate and share our experience that for other users, it will be very helpful.
Yes,
And
because
also it's if it's Instagram or something like this, it's a testimonial, you know, what people say about the business, and usually businesses put in their pages all this information.
yes. Yeah.
And Google reviews are also there, like with every business have a website, and I think when you are looking for that particular location of the business, you usually go on Google Maps, and then you also have the reviews there. So I think that is also useful when you see those reviews.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. So a lot of times when you're looking for a business that you have no experience with them, how do you know if you should go to that business? Well, you look at the reviews, and you look at the what I've seen businesses do, and there's an integrity aspect to this, is that they'll write their own reviews, and all the reviews are great. And even if you are a great business, there's going to be a customer that's not satisfied with your greatness. So when you just have, you know, we have all 5 stars. I've got 1,000 reviews and they're all 5 stars. That should be suspect, right? And so anyway, quality should be a standard. It shouldn't be something that, you know, it's a competitive advantage that we're better because we have better. You want to make sure that it's a standard. We're assuming that if you patronize my business, you should expect that you have a quality product or service. So how do you ensure that? You want to put quality into every step of the process. And Deming is the father of the quality. I think it's Jonathan Deming. What is it? I forget his first name. So this whole quality aspect came into play. And I think it came into play in the early ages of the auto industry, where they want to make sure that the output, which is an automobile, is a quality automobile. So how do you ensure that? Not by inspecting it. You put quality into the processes to build that automobile. So quality parts for the engine, for the brakes, etc. And then you'll have a quality automobile at the end of the process. It's not inspecting it at the end. It's too late for that. So build quality into your processes to ensure that the end product is a quality product. So Deming reported that quality must be improved constantly and consistently. It's not one and done. You revisit it, because if you're using quality parts over time, there might be superior parts that you can use into that process. You want to also set quality goals. When you go into manufacturing, they'll say like 99% quality. That means that maybe if I have 1,000 pencils that I am making, if 99% of them are perfect, that's my quality standard. Because sometimes it's virtually impossible to get 100% in that type of manufacturing, right? So you want to set those goals. We're looking for a 99% or 90% or 95. If it's items that are not important, like a pencil will not save a life. But if you're looking at items that are, important, such as the brakes on your car, it should be 100% work 100% of the time. There's no room for that. And in project management, if you haven't taken the class, you may see it. There's this concept of 6 Sigma, which is standard deviation, and it shows you how many sigmas in terms of quality. If you're at 6 Sigma, you've encompassed the entire curve. You're out here. So it's 100%. I think it's 99.99999%. Let me be clear about that. So this is the entire region. And as you move in, it's less and less. So things that require 6 Sigma are like brakes or aircraft parts and things like that. That has to be very stringent. There's no gray area. It has to work all the time. So Deming, in terms of quality, and then the Japanese also have, and I don't remember which came first, this Ishikawa. I mean, it's not Ishikawa. That's the Ishikawa is the fishbone. It's the Kaizen. Kaizen is continuous improvement. That means you're always improving your processes to make sure that your end product is always the best. So there's quality standards out there that you can implement into your business processes to deliver your product or service. Deming also recommended that you use a scientific method when you're making changes. Scientific means that you approach it in a very structured way where you assess the issue or assess the process in this case, look at everything that feeds into the process, and then look at any issues with the process and how you would go about remediating the process and how you build the solution now into the new process. So it's a very scientific approach that you use. It's not guessing or, if the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of honey, then that's what you put in there. So that's pretty specific. It's not dunking the honey in there, Well, some people do. But it's prescribing a certain way to perform this process. So quality of inputs affects outputs. And that's what Deming is saying, and the Kaizen method is saying continuous improvement. Strategic alliances is where you join forces with another organization to enter a market. For instance, if I'm a US company and let's say I want to establish a presence in Egypt, I would want to form a strategic alliance with a business in Egypt that is already established, knows the terrain, knows the customer, knows the market, and then I can join forces with them. And usually what happens is that we have complementary products or services so that we can both now be a force in the market. So usually if you're a new business, you want to, join forces with an existing business. And one of the teams we talked about that with the charging station to kind of, if you have a strip mall and you have, established businesses in there, you join forces with them. where if you spend X amount in this business that's established, you get 20% off the charging and things like that. So it's always beneficial to join forces. Two are better than one, right? So you want to look for ways to establish those beneficial relationships. So equipment needed for startup. So if your startup requires equipment, new equipment can be expensive. Delivery may be delayed because we have the supply chain stuff going on, and because they're building it. If you think about the critical path, if you're building a piece of equipment, let's say you're building a lawnmower, there are different parts that go into building that lawnmower, and if those parts are delayed, then the final lawnmower is not made. That's delayed as well. So these are issues with getting new equipment. If you use used equipment, the equipment is already there, but you need to look at how used is it, and get something in writing in terms of how long should I expect this thing to work. You can also lease equipment which has low initial costs, but high long-term costs if you're leasing, or if you're using credit, and you got to look at the credit rate and so forth. So you need to understand what you need now in terms of equipment, what you need 6 months later, a year later, and down the line. So it's not just about this is the equipment we need today. Think about it life cycle, like what equipment do I need down the line? So think about it like that. So you should now chart this. This is a good opportunity to chart something where you're looking at the new equipment and the positives and the negatives of buying new, the used equipment, the positive and the negative, and then the leasing equipment, the positive and the negative. And obviously the positive will outweigh the negative. And the one that has the most positive, that's the alternative that you choose. Timing can be a competitive advantage. So timing is in when's the best time to enter the market. And how does that entry afford you the greatest competitive advantage? And if you are seasonal, let's say for instance, I always use the lawnmower because I'm looking out my window and I see my neighbors' lawns as well as mine. And now is the time, this is April in Georgia, where people start to care about their yards and their lawn. So if I was and as I'm saying it, I'm also thinking, if I was a lawnmower mowing business, this would be a prime time to be entering the market, because people are thinking about their yards and they may be looking for a change. They might be saying, I've used this place or this person for several years. I might be open for something new. So this is a time when, people are thinking about this. So this is a great time to enter the market, for example. And you might enter the market with a competitive advantage. Like, how are you going to be? So you have competition. How are you going to be different or better than your competition? And there are lots of ways to do that. I'm not an expert in the lawn mowing business, but I can think of long-term contracts, which could be a way to have a competitive advantage. Or, for example, if you live in a subdivision, which is a group of homes in an area, if all the neighbors use this lawn mowing service, you get a discount or deep discount, so forth. So you got to think about what's the best time to enter the market. So the general environment of the market, what your competition is doing in the market, and then if there's cycles in purchasing or supply patterns, like if people are purchasing EVs during the springtime or the summertime or what have you. We just recently had a Tesla dealership not too far from where I live. There was a furniture store that they kicked it out. They have a Tesla dealership because we need cars, not furniture. So if there's cycles in purchasing, and then lifestyle issues, when you think about your customer, which is your market, think about their lifestyle. What do they do? So you want to really, dig deep into the person that is your customer, the persons that are your customer. All right, time management, very important in running a business, as you know. We talked about at the top of this call about, how you have 2 weeks off, which is not enough time, just enough time for you to remember what you learned and not forget it. But time management is critical as adults, because we have family, we have work, we have school, we have things that we need to fit into a certain amount of time. And how do we manage that time effectively? So write down what has to be accomplished in all parts of the business formation. And that's where the business plan comes in. And we talked about the production management that has time. We talk about the processes to start the business and the critical path. All that is time bound. So you want to make sure that you understand the time that's involved in doing these things. You want to prioritize the things that are critical so that some things have lesser priority than others. So you want to make sure these things that had priority, these have to be done first. And then putting them in time frames. That's what we did with the task list, right? And project management tools such as Microsoft Project, not the only one, but that's the one I'm the most familiar with. It does a great job of putting things in that. Speaking of Microsoft Project, the client that I'm working with, it's multi-year contract with them. We did a major rebaselining of their schedule in the last few weeks, and their schedule has, I want to say, 85,000 lines in terms of tasks to be done. So that was a very big lift. My part of the schedule, which is OCM, was in multiple phases of the project and also dependent on tasks that had to be done prior to doing what I needed to do from OCM perspective. So timing is critical because if one thing is off, everything is off. The project has a end date, and we don't want to push the date out because it's not a good look for the client. Because we're actually implementing our software in the part of their business cycle where it's most appropriate. They are universities, right? So you don't want to implement software in the middle of the semester. Like right now, we're having class. So is this a great time to implement a new student information system? No, because it's disruptive. So the universities are operating in strict time guidelines. So must we. So timing is everything, and time management is everything. So allocate time for dealing with operational issues. You don't want to just the time that we talked about, the bank account, the loan, what have you, the operation, making the plaque, engraving it. Allocate time for if there's an issue with any of these, how much time have I allocated? And what you can do when you build out your project plan, you could put a buffer in it. Let's say something takes 2 weeks to do. I might want to build in an additional day into that, or 2 days, so that if there are any issues with that task, it can be remediated, because more than likely there's another task depending on it. And if I have to move over to the next task without addressing the issues, then you run into quality. Because now I can't check what I did because I have a task waiting on me. So I got to finish this up and throw it over the wall to the next task. And that introduces quality in your processes and your activities. And then you want to mark off the tasks when they're done, when they're complete. If they're 50% complete, that helps you to plan better. 25% not started. All these different task statuses are in the PM software. If you don't have that, you can put it in a spreadsheet. I know Google has a project task list, and I think in another tool they have a Gantt chart that shows the tasks, the resources, predecessors, and so forth. And then it shows the duration of the top. It's a Gantt chart. So it's good to mark them accomplished, so you know what's been done and what's left to be done. And that is it for the chapter on operations. Are there any questions about this chapter before we take our break? Stop sharing. Anyone have any questions or comments? All right, I'll take that as a no. 11:24. Let's come back at Let's come back at 11:45. Okay. So can someone type that in the chat? We'll return at 11:45 because I can't type. Please and thank you. So we'll resume at 11:45. Is there a voice thing on here? It doesn't have a voice thing. It's not good. Thank you, Samia. Or Samia.
Welcome, Professor. No, you pronounce it right.
It's Samia? Because I thought that was
Samia,
very
yes.
American. Samia. We say Samia. I was like,
Yeah.
is it Samia? Is it European? So it's Samia. Okay.
I know in many of my projects, when they call my name wrong, I say, okay, just call me Sam.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
easier.
Okay, Sam. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll see you at 11:45, everyone. All righty, welcome back, everyone. So now we're going to go into and thank you, Noran, for posting your questions. We're going to go into the team rooms to continue building out the different aspects of the business plan presentation. So you're going to be looking at discussing 4 questions in your team rooms, and they're related to the lecture that we just did. The first question is, what elements would you include in a critical path chart for your business? And how would you ensure that your estimates were accurate? So that's a great question that they're asking you. And it's the question that we deal with in life, right? Every day is, how do we know if the information that we see, read, write is accurate? And there's a scientific way to do it in project management. It's called the PERT method. And that is PERT. It's the PERT method, Program Evaluation and Review Technique. It's a method for estimating. So it takes into consideration 3 types of estimates. The let's see, how can I put it? The pessimistic, let's say the pessimistic is, let's say, how long does it take to paint my office? So the pessimistic would be, oh, it's going to take a week, which is a long time to paint an office. The optimistic would be, we could paint this in 2 hours. And then the most likely would be somewhere between the pessimistic and the optimistic. And with the PERT method, you take all 3 estimates and you weight them, and then you divide them. And let me just get the formula here so I can put it in the chat. And if you've taken project management, you know this method. So it's it's right here. So this is how you can answer that second question, the second part of that question. How can you ensure that your estimates were accurate. Here's the formula. I just put it in the chat. So you put optimistic duration plus 4 times the most likely plus the pessimistic, all of that divided by 6. Notice the weight that's put on the most likely. So the most likely would be, I would ask someone that's painted an office this size and see what they say, because that's most likely what it would be. But I also want to take in consideration if it can be done faster or if it's going to take longer. So I include the optimistic and the pessimistic. So you put all that in parentheses, optimistic plus 4 times the most likely, plus the pessimistic, everything divided by 6. Okay, all righty. So that's one way to do it scientifically. You might have other ways. The second question is like, what is the potential location for your business? Locations for your business. Evaluate the different locations and pick one that is the most attractive. So we're coming down to the wire. So you're going to pick a location that you're going to recommend. However, you also want to think about other locations, because an investor might ask you, well, what have you thought about any others? Because something might happen to your first pick where you can't get that location. What criteria are critical for the location decision of your new business? And we talked about what that is, the traffic, customers going in there. Is there an anchor store and things like that? So think about the criteria that you're going to use and what are the specific ways you plan to build legitimacy for your business. We had a whole list of things that we listed in the lecture and in the chapter. So we're going to go to our team rooms. Any questions before we adjourn to our team rooms? Anyone have any questions? Okay, we're going to adjourn and we're going to return to this room around 12:30-ish, 12:30-ish. I'll send a 5-minute warning so we can look at the individual questions and also get any questions about the discussion. So, all righty, off to your rooms you go. Let me open up all the rooms.
I think we're back to the main room.
No, we are back.
Yes, we are. Let me put in the chat the individual assignment and see if there are any questions before we adjourn for the day. So I just put the individual exercises. There are 4 questions this week. First question, what are the lease or buy equipment issues you will face? So if you're leasing your equipment or buying it, what are some issues that you'll face? Can you do used equipment or new equipment? So these questions you already talked about in your team room, so they should be rather easy to answer. What's the difference in price of the new and used equipment? And then what timing issues are involved in your business? And we talked about timing issues in the chapter and in the lecture today. So any questions for me about today or about the assignment for the week? Anybody have any questions?
I have one question, Professor.
Yes.
So about our PowerPoint presentations, we can just record and share it with you, and we are not going to do it in the live class, right?
Yeah, it's not going to be live.
Okay.
Because I want to give you as much time as possible to do it. So you'll record it and then submit it, and then I'll review it.
Okay.
Or I'll view it, I should say.
Sure.
Unless you want to do it live, it's up to you.
No, I think recording is good.
Okay. All right. So you're still getting practice in presenting, so that's good. Because I know we couldn't do it live, so I was like, well, you got to practice presenting this anyway. So that was the best way to do it.
Sure.
Any other questions before we adjourn? Going once. Twice. Okay. I'll see you guys next week. Have a great week. Great, and we're still in Ramadan, so all the best with that. And I will see you on WhatsApp. If not, I'll see you right here next week.
Sure, Professor. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Have a great
All right.
Thank you,
day.
Professor.
Good day. Bye.